Today, we're chatting with two firms in Austin who work together about hospitality project collaboration and business strategy. This webinar is hosted by Monograph, the easiest project management platform for architects and engineers to keep projects on track and profitable. We're here today because architects don't design buildings alone, but collaboration isn't always easy. So how should architects and MEP engineers work together? Joining us today is architect turned CEO of Monograph, Robert Ewan. 6 years ago, Robert started Monograph to make project management and business easier for architects and engineers. And now, over 12,000 architects and engineers use Monograph to work smarter and faster. Michael Shu, FAIA, is here from Michael Shu Office of Architecture. They're an award-winning, fully integrated architecture and interior design practice based in Austin, Texas. They focus on hospitality-driven projects that range from mixed-use developments to commercial interiors and residences. APTUS Engineering is a performance-driven MEP engineering firm based in Austin, Texas as well. They're known for a service-oriented culture and a collaborative approach. It's led by co-founders Eric Zisman and Sujay Regmi, and the firm provides MEP design services across commercial, healthcare, educational, and mixed-use sectors. I'm going to kick it off with the first question. How'd y'all start working together?
Eric, CJ, what was our first project?
We should go back to 10 years ago. Teachers, we did a lot of projects with y'all.
Yeah, we've certainly learned a lot with that. And that is a sort of drive-through and seated QSR, so quick service restaurant in Austin, Texas. Burgers, hamburgers.
Not only known for flavor, but also for a pretty unique look and feel as you approach your drive-through. I would say it's not your out-of-the-box fast food restaurant.
Yeah, and I know one of the challenges with those projects are very tight space where we have to put a lot of equipment in, and then how do we still make it look and feel good as opposed to feeling like you're in the middle of a commercial kitchen. So that's always, I know, the goal that we work with you guys on.
How long ago was that again? That was 10 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
10 years ago, and I'd say that's a client we've worked together on new concepts until just last year. I'd say we wrapped up the last one. So it's evolved and kept going. Speaks to the level of dedication and quality.
Incredible. I'm curious, like what kind of projects in terms of like different typologies other than restaurants and fast food do you three continue to collaborate on? Are there other types?
Oh, I think we're a very project type diverse office. So we've worked on everything from small office building, normal thing like that, to large high-end resort communities with all the sort of complex amenities, as you can imagine. Normal restaurants of all sizes and price points. And then we do a little bit of medical with you guys with Westlake Dermatology, which is a very sort of designed forward dermatology provider in most of the Texas cities now.
I'm curious, how do you determine what projects to take, or maybe more importantly, what kind of projects you don't take? I'm curious if there's a framework, especially when you do such a wide range.
Yeah, I'll answer it first and then I'll hand off to the guys here. We have sort of an informal flow chart. And the first few items are going to be, can we succeed at this project? It may be hard, but can we succeed? Usually that is like, is the time frame something we can hit? Is it real? Is the budget real? Does this client know enough to do it for us to sort of help? But then the big question is, what are the design opportunities on this project? It may be a project that checks all the boxes, all the financial, time, schedule boxes, but it's not a design doesn't have a lot of design interest or ability for innovation or curiosity for us to explore, then, that'll be something we'll turn a job down for.
For us, we try to bring different flavors to the group. We do projects of small size, large size, more, commercials, more, residential. We also sort of like do things that are something that we haven't done, challenge ourselves sometimes and figure out a way to do it. And it brings the best out of you when you are exposed to something that you may not necessarily know, but you're ready to learn and, get into the deeper and have a successful project. And that's what we do. It keeps us in our toes as well.
Yeah, I love that point, Sujay, because I think we're both in that space where we're willing to take risks and dive into new project types that we don't know about because we have enough confidence in our process to think that, we can be successful at it. And I know if we don't have the internal parts, then we can't ever say yes to jobs that may make us a little uncomfortable at first. So very new project types, working in a new region, working with new construction typologies or structures. And it's good to have team members. It's one of our criteria who are willing to sort of go along in the journey with us because as you know, when we have teams where we're trying to push the envelope on something, but the rest of the team is like, nope, don't want to do that, can't do that. We don't get anywhere. We get nowhere, right? It's like leads to frustration and it leads to a horrible client experience. Clients generally don't like the complexity of what it takes to put a project together. The different players, their different needs and concerns, their tolerance for risk. So when we have teams that are sort of lined up at enough of a level, yeah, let us explore that. And then, you guys come back to us with real solutions. That's incredibly important to us.
Projects are long in architecture. How do you apply a structure to projects? What do you see as patterns in their structure? Do you follow closely the standard phases? Do you think about phasing a bit differently? And then also as an engineering firm, having a smaller slice of the scope, but having that project still in the office. How do you structure understanding with the project, even when there's maybe a lot of scope happening outside of your world?
The question brings an interesting perspective for the way it approaches the design process. We, as you mentioned, that the architect on a traditional project will start with a client from initial concept and carry through to final construction the day it opens. MEP comes into the design process typically quite a ways through the development, how it's going to look, feel, and serve the community. And that just really makes a concerted effort to get involved as early as we possibly can in the conceptualization, space programming, and understanding of what the client is looking to achieve, how they want their end users to interact and get involved early. Even though we are a small slice of the pie, we like to feel like we bring that functionality and comfort to the vision that starts well before we're ever even involved.
We have the normal phases. We add a couple of different phases, which feels like a little bit more of like what a modern design firm is. So we have branding also in our office, and that came out of every project had to build in unique qualities and differentiators. Sometimes architects aren't the best at that. And then you could call that the identity part, the storytelling part, the why do I exist part. And a lot of times we get that from the client and then we mirror it. We reiterate it to them. And then it gives us guidelines for how we go about the design process. Otherwise, we're staring at a blank sheet of paper sometimes and don't really know why we're doing something. So it's like always trying to answer the why question first. So that's on the front end. And because we do interiors and procurement, and then we fabricate quite a bit of products. So lighting, F&E, built-in furniture, lots of millwork, the branding. People will do integrated signage, wayfinding, all of those things. Those people are inserted in certain places. So I think about our process as more like a stage, like actors come on stage and actors walk off stage at different times. Like we want everyone to sort of like, instead of at the end of the play, they take a bow, it's like everyone shows up at the front end. So everyone knows who is doing what. We talk about, okay, this is a project where the interiors are doing a lot of work. So like, they're kind of front and center. Sometimes projects are not architectural. Other times it's very much about FF&E, especially if it's a quick paced sort of thing. We don't have time to build something. So we try to pick and choose the team that works for that project in an efficient way. And that's how we build our contracts as well.
I'm so curious, and it's just fascinating to hear you tell a story of you describing your internal processes, like conducting a play. And there's these actors that come on and come off at different timing. Now I'm just really curious on how do you structure your time? Assuming not every actor is going to spend the same amount of time. Everyone's going to have to be timed sequentially or not sequentially in parallel. Do you have a framework in how you kind of keep things organized, or is it kind of project by project when you think about sequencing and structuring your time?
Yeah, we have a big Monday morning meeting, which is sort of resource allocation, looking at new work. It is probably the toughest few hours of any week, especially because as a design studio, we resist too much organization because we're always afraid that it may hinder creativity or sort of having diverse voices, young voices, fresh thinking on projects. But I also know, and this is what we're struggling with now, is that structure comes with a lot of complexities. Like, how do you manage that? And that is what we're working on now, because the inefficiencies. And it also leads to sort of inefficiencies in staff development and career path building for all our talent, because they're hopping around on stuff, working for different principals or partners on different project types. It's a great learning experience, but it comes inherently with a barrier to entry every time that sort of happens with any one person in the office.
It sounds like you don't have a solution yet, but you're working on it.
Yeah, no solution quite yet. We know, monograph definitely, and we looked at other things, and we cobbled ourselves along with just spreadsheets and the normal stuff, and we're out of that a little bit at least. But yeah, it's been a challenge.
Eric and Sujay, like, just curious, do you have the same Monday resourcing meeting that Michael has, and is it just as painful?
Well, I guess, it started in the pandemic era as everybody started working from home. We needed to figure out a way to sort of like assemble a team. So what we ended up doing is we would have some multiple weekly meetings, but we have a quick, short 15, 20-minute daily meetings in the morning. It's 9 o'clock. Everybody comes either online or remote or in person here. And so talk about what transpired yesterday and what's going to have to be done today. And, the day, the one of the challenges we had then is working from home. Everybody was in siloed in corners, and nobody really knew exactly what was going on with anybody else. So we needed to have a platform where somebody can come and say, "Hey, we did this. I need help on that. We need to have deadlines here and there. I need some support." So that sort of interaction, the element was, we found essential and very, very needed. And so we did that. And aside from that, we have, project manager resource allocation meeting on Fridays, so that we have the resource allocated and sort of like broadcast that out on Monday. So yeah, these tools, as Michael said, we're continually refining. It works, but then there is room for improvement, and so we'll continue to add more features and dimensions, and it's just kind of like the elements, which, and see if something works better than others.
How about in your shared timelines between projects? Do you have a way of thinking about key moments during the phases? Early is important. I think that's a really key idea that might be a bit counterintuitive to some firms working out there with consultants. But I think there'd be some interest in hearing more detail about how you structured your shared time together as collaborators.
Collaboration is always on a scale that equates to the size and timeline of the project. There are go small projects where we have to trust each other is running the same direction and has the same end goal, and we hit the finish line at the same time. We much prefer a project that has a longer cadence and has the opportunity to check in multiple ways as a design team, that us and the interiors and architecture are blending our elements together to have a finished product that feels thought out and seamless, though is being applied from different teams and different perspectives, but also one that we come together and present that to the client and the owner in a way that shows you chose the right team that can work together. So I feel like our preference is always to have the internal design touch, and then you turn around as a team together, organize, and present that as a complete product to the client, to the outside world. Not every architecture MEP dynamic approaches it that way.
Yeah, one of the things I appreciate about the consultants we work with, APTUS, is you guys get our sort of what we're trying to do. So we're primarily about customer experience, like what's the guest experience. And we know that the five senses are what is creating that for people. What is the air temperature? What's the velocity of the air temperature? How do we control daylighting without making it go away? How do we dim circuits? And we learned hard lessons with you. Like it's complex. The technology is changing, and we need a lot of control to get essentially the vibe that we want at the end of the day. Because what we're looking for is to have a direct and individualized emotional experience with the people who occupy the spaces. Like, that is meaningful. That is what people remember. It's what you take away. It's like we can rationalize all the stuff, why it's a great project, but at the end of the day, people aren't feeling it, and they're excited about being there. And they talk about it. It's not going to be as successful as it can be. So it requires all of those little parts and pieces. And a lot of that stuff sometimes is what you might think of as interior design parts, like solar shading devices, acoustic quality of any space. I know we work with you guys even to tune acoustic quality. We want the space to be louder. We want the space to be softer. We want intimacy here. We want activation there. And then how is it that we design something, and then all the different components of a project and all the different players are all working to the same thing? That's what we like, to where you guys will come in and be like, "Hey, are you sure you really want this air device in your ceiling? It's ugly," or something like that. That's what we like. When our teams you guys are part of the QC process for the end experience of a user.
It's so cool to hear both of you speak about collaboration and then stories about how that was collaborations manifest through the experiences that you and the entire design team are aspiring to build. It's totally incredible. I imagine a lot of that comfort comes from a decade of working together. And I'm curious, like now a decade in and a decade looking forward, how do you think architects and engineers should continue to work together? Like what will have to change? What have you learned and what do you wish that you probably would have learned sooner? We'll love to ask that to both Eric, Sunjay, and Michael.
I see it putting the tools that we have available, design, software, rendering software is amazing. You can paint the most realistic vision of what we're after and put it in front of the team. And I feel like for the longest time, that exploratory effort always fell in the lap of the architect, interior designer, directly with the client. And then from an MEP perspective, we're lucky enough to be brought on the team. It's now our role to try to fit our pieces within the framework, that the skeleton that's out there. And we're really trying to back that up and get involved early and be a part of that process. And like Michael said, we're happy to show you what the diffusers are going to look like, or if you're going for an industrial feel and you want to see every conduit, want to use color or paint, or you want to expose it, that's your look. Hey, we can take that concept and run. And being able to utilize some of the modeling software and the ability to get together more often and within a model together that was not available as tools previously really opens up design opportunities.
Yeah, it's sort of like a fundamental change in how you design in a way. Almost things happen in a real time. What used to be, there's an architectural model block to a certain point, and then it's transferred to the other consultants, and they work on it. And then there's that static back and forth between different milestones. That's not the case anymore. Most of the projects are hosted online in the cloud. So it's almost a real-time design. Changes on one end is visible and, affects the other discipline. So we're having to adapt. At the same time, it's sort of like brought the different perspective of seeing the entirety of the project in a 3D model, perhaps. And sometimes it's difficult to visualize how, the architectural perspective of that project is, what elements of that 2D representation is not always good. And so that has helped us a lot to be able to see those things and in a design concurrently in a very collaborative manner. So the end result, we all get to the end point just about the same time. It's not one, leading the other. There are some changes that MEP makes that affects outcome, right? So it's a different, design process.
I think that's absolutely right. I think that is a very more up-to-date approach. Is like there's a lot more back and forth, because I do remember it wasn't that long ago we'd do SD and then we'd hand off to you to do SD or DD MEP work, and then it'd just be really trading drawings. There was not a whole lot of sitting around together and how do we accomplish this or how do we accomplish that. And the software has been tremendous for that. It has.
What's a project that tested your collaboration and how'd you get to the other side?
It's always, I guess, the fun project that you've never done in the past don't necessarily have the same preference. Those are the good ones to know. Things like, okay, a new dimension, brewery comes in, some of the things that we haven't been encountered in the past. Let's say, how do you design this? Those elements, that's where, the synergy between the design teams are super essential and critical to understand, what that is all about and how do we facilitate to design around it so that the end goal and product is met. Almost every project has some little bit of those, these challenging elements. Some have more, some have less, but almost everyone we try to sort of like coordinate that, figure it out, and adjust those things as we go.
The one that we have is under construction. I know they had a meeting on site end of last week, is the Headliners Club. That's located on the top 2 floors of a high-rise building downtown. It's a private club, catering, kitchen, bar, event space, on top of a high rise that I couldn't tell you when it was originally built, but it predates myself probably. And they want a full refresh from a materials look and feel and equipment. And so now we're tasked with the challenge of getting brand new HVAC equipment, kitchen appliances, all the materials to reskin it up 40-something floors through an operational downtown building and renovate the top 2 floors is quite a challenge for every consultant involved.
I think that's a perfect example. Thanks for taking that job, by the way. There's few harder jobs than that because they want to stay operational through the process as well. And it's an old building, and it was never meant to really have a modern sort of F&B concept up there that has a life of its own. But it's become such an important part of Austin. It's for those who don't know, Headliners Club was started by journalists that essentially kind of camped out in Austin to sort of gather news from the legislature. And so it was like the journalist room. And then they started giving awards. It's where they would hang out, and it became an institution in Texas. It's sort of a little watering hole for the political intelligentsia, and then politicos were hanging out there, and then it became a place where a lot of urban professionals spend time. And so it's not only is it a tough project, it's one that everyone knows in Austin.
How many people are you trying to put on the roof? I'm curious.
The capacity for the whole club is hundreds. I bet if they sat everyone at one time, it's 400 plus.
Yeah, they have 2 floors, so the top floors would easily do 300 to 400.
Oh my God. On an old building that needs to stay operational, that is a staple of the city. I almost wish for this project, in this discussion, we had the structural engineer too, because now I have a lot of questions on how do you retrofit a building of that old, while still being operational, to hold the new loads that are gonna come in shortly after the building reopens.
There is a rather large screening around the mechanical system, and the structure of the mechanical system itself is sort of like kicks back into the inside portion. So you can't really, we were looking at how do you bring some equipment up on the roof. Even using a helicopter or something to drop it was not an option because of the screening structure. They're in the way. So we had to sort of like figure out carrying some of the equipment through the stairwell up. And challenge is you had these narrow corners, and so the units would have to be broken down into sections big enough or small enough to carry, and yet large enough that you can go around the corner and not break down into a million smaller parts. And yeah, it's a project. The contractors do play a tremendous role in the success of the project. They do amazing things and build things that sometimes seems impossible to build. Credit also certainly have to go to some of these the trade partners that are willing to execute our vision and plans.
It's been so clear to me since I started in architecture decades ago, and even now, hearing these stories, that to create magical spaces, it takes a really, really large team and a lot of experts and professionals. It is unachievable without everyone playing their role and contributing and collaborating together to execute on that project. I'm so curious, between the three of you, were there anything that were unexpected from working together that helped you collaborate better? Maybe something that completely got you off guard, and maybe something you might not do again. I'm curious.
What do you think?
I would say there's one for every project. It's how big, how little do you want it to be? We worked on a project together called Uptown Sports Bar, a long-standing, another watering hole over on the east side of Austin that, was abandoned, sat empty, but still kind of had a visual presence in the neighborhood. And they wanted to come in, and Michael's team did a great job of revamping, maintaining its historical look while modernizing it into a restaurant that holds weight today. And we came in, and it's, the equipment you use to air condition a commercial kitchen today is not the same as it was back when. It's much larger. It has a lot more pieces and components, and nowhere near as challenging as Headliners, but it was cramming 10 pounds of equipment into a 5-pound bag, hiding it on a tall 1-story building so that you don't see monstrosities on the roof, and then being able to distribute through the space while giving, it has a very open concept inside. And there was a lot of pieces to this puzzle and vision that, one by one, we just had to check off or come to terms with what is feasible from a constructability standpoint.
That's a good example. And I think it's not unlike where the hospitality industry is. We do restaurants now with 3-4 different hood types. So you'll have the main cooking hood. You'll have a fuel burning hood. You'll have another hood for a different type of cooking equipment, and then a dish hood for humidity and heat, and how to make all that sort of like look okay, go away, not produce noise and sound that doesn't make people feel good, while still sort of like showing people how the food is being prepared and made, and the sort of performance aspect of that in restaurants. And that job, Uptown Sports Bar, was an interesting, because it was a historic building. A lot of people were paying attention to it, and we had to make sure it all stayed intact. So the new MEP systems almost had to look a little vintage when they were exposed, like the air registers, but then the rest of it had to just be highly functional and not seen. Yeah, like there's a wood burning part up front and then the regular stuff in back.
Totally. It's a trend in the hospitality restaurant design these days, is to have the visually open and connected kitchen to the dining space. And that offers a architecturally designed challenge and a very large MEP challenge, as to keep both spaces comfortable, balanced, yet coexisting is tough.
Yeah, that balance has gotten to be more and more challenging with the increase in air temperature. Just our weather here is it's definitely changing, and how to keep comfort and functionality, when you have hoods that are sucking up thousands of CFM at any moment, and make indoor comfort sort of like still seamless for people.
So architects and MEP engineers, they don't come from the same world. Like architects, interior designers, and landscape architects, they're a little bit closer to architects than the engineers are. But at the end of the day, buildings bring all these folks together. So as you've had to get to know each other and how you think, how you work, what are some misunderstandings you've discovered that architects tend to have about MEP engineers and vice versa?
Y'all should definitely go first on this one.
You hit the nail on the head. It's all trust, collaboration, and communication. As an engineer, you walk into the room, tend to have a targeted profile on you before you open your mouth, and what you bring to the table, regardless of how old or experienced you may be, or if you work for a monster firm that everybody's heard of, or one that might just be locally known by the people we've collaborated with. You need to come in with an open mindset and problem solving as the number one objective.
Yeah. And then I always kind of joke that engineers can only think in straight lines and sharp corners, and they always sort of like have the bending and the waves and everything else. So essentially, sometimes we don't necessarily see beauty in the same things. We love our mechanical equipment, electrical equipment; they're all aesthetically pleasing to us, but not necessarily the case in the architectural eyes. So and so some of the things, I think sometimes challenge would be the utilitarian feature versus the architectural feature. Sometimes how do you blend these things? And sometimes, there's always desire to hide. For example, a supply diffuser. You want to hide it inside a cove and not have it be exposed. Whereas functionally, it may not provide the same level of the performance. So how do you blend these two things, collaborate these two things outside the box? And these are some of the things, we challenge each other, if you will. Sometimes we say, hey, you have to be the black sheep in the family and say, no, it can't be done. But then most of the times we're like, okay, we'll figure it out. But how about this? How about that? And so, in that iterative process certainly would get us to a point where, we sort of like contribute towards the overall grandeur vision of the architectural, world.
I think for us, especially the younger people in the firm, we do have those sort of stereotypes like, oh, the engineers want me to do this. I don't want to do it. It's ugly. I don't want giant registers. Or like, do we really have to have emergency lights in this project, or annunciators, or like flash, or all the stuff that we have to have? Like we dislike those things. But we know, once you get a little experience, that, hey, you just got to try and work with your best team and then try to put them in the best place that you can. The classical sort of issue is like, how do you put an exit sign into a minimalist sort of museum, right? It's like every museum I go to is like, where are the exit signs? I'm looking for the things that I know the architects probably like wrung their hands about for, weeks on end. Robert's laughing because he gets it.
You have no idea that is. Every time I'm at a museum, I do look for the exit signs. I'm just curious, fascinated. I know you have to do it. how did you do it? Because I know there was a design philosophy that the team is trying to execute. And these are really hard problems that took many different stakeholders, the MEP and the architect and the interiors and the structures to come together to resolve. And I've seen some done very elegantly, and I've seen some not done so elegantly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You can tell when the team was lined up when, oh, it's like, okay, there's a solution there. Hey, all the way down to hey, does the exit sign, is it going to be red light or green light? We have every project on our checklist. Like, is this a green exit sign project or a red exit sign project? You can tell. That's one of the things you can walk in and be like, okay, the MEPs were on board with the architect or whatever. And then other times you walk in, you're like, oh man, I can't believe they put that sign there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I didn't know that was a red exit sign and a green exit sign, sort of like two design approaches. I'm curious about that now. Personally, I always like me, but that's just me.
Yeah, green's harder in a dim restaurant space where we're going for a very warm color temperature. So red always works out better in that situation. A place that's very daylit, bright, more professional and functional, green is awesome and works well. It's a little bit more crisp. So we usually think about it as like hospitality versus everything else.
It's fascinating because I imagine we had a small short conversation around cars earlier. I always assimilate red as like don't go, stay away, and green come to me. And though, when you need an exit, you kind of want to go, but in most cases, 99.9% of the time, you really hope you don't have to use the emergency exits on.
Yeah, for sure.
So much trust has been built over the decade plus. I'm curious if you three can share maybe like how do you build that trust? How do you maintain that trust? Because it isn't easy to start building the trust, and it's equally as just as hard to maintain that trust over long periods of time.
Yeah, I can tell you we really value candid conversation and feedback loops. That growth is a continual process and it's never, we have to invest in the people we work with, just like I have to invest in my own staff. It's a time commitment. So you're just trying to choose the best people that you feel like is a worthwhile investment of your time and effort. So that's how we go about the sort of criteria of selecting who we want to work with, because we know projects are never going to be perfect. It's more about working with people who what it is that we're shooting for. They see the things we could do better next time, and then they're there with us to sort of like, take the learnings into the next job.
I feel like, each firm speaks their own language, and every consultant and everybody has their own language of doing things. And it almost feels like you have to learn the respective language so that, if Michael is saying something, which sort of like inherently understand what he means, what the design philosophy is, what the expectation is, how to execute this project. So the more you collaborate with each other, the more the ease or the comfort of understanding that language, and that sort of goes a long ways. He doesn't, the design does not necessarily have to be completely spelled out, and yet the a few elements will sort of like tell you, okay, this is what the vision is, so let's just work towards that. And it's different for every firm. There's every firm has a slightly different design approach and understanding. And on our consulting side, being able to learn and quickly find that formula to understand that, it helps cultivating this relationship. And it's as long as you sort of like understand each other, I think that's the way to go forward. And so that there's minimizing the miscommunication.
Maybe I'll try to be more pointed. I'm curious, how often do you three grab dinner or participate in some of Austin's watering holes together? It's a way to
not enough, I should say.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't get out that much, and quite honest, because I have children too. But we see each other more at professional functions, organizations, industry things, real estate things.
That's incredible here.
Yeah, and then I saw Michael, I guess, a couple of years ago, and I was looking forward to seeing him again this year. He did the MS-150, and he was training for it, and I was training for it in the same group. So we saw each other a few times. Different outfit, but
I hope where you were going was to encourage everyone to celebrate the community and the wins. It's something we tell our younger team members. Like, this is a family. All your clients, consultants, like we're all together on a common path to providing a good experience, and try to encourage them to get together. I feel like as the hierarchy grows and different people get more busy with life and kids, it happens less and less, where almost it's more important to get together and enjoy each other and what's been built, the collective effort, not to lose sight of that.
You're absolutely right. I was trying to see if we can steer towards a conversation where, yes, there are a lot of tools out there yes, everyone's remote. Everyone's toolbox from MEP engineers to an architect have grown over the last couple decades, but there's still essential tools that we shouldn't forget, like getting together, resolving things in person, especially if they become extraordinarily difficult. Don't forget that we do have access to phones. Use it. Not everything needs to be communicated via an email or Slack or Teams, and that our toolbox is quite wide, and we're fairly well equipped as an industry, and will continue to be even more equipped as new tools come out. But you're right, Eric. I was trying to steer towards like remember that the toolkit's quite wide, and it's not everything is transactional and on Zoom and on Slack and Teams.
Yeah, I think even at a project level, I so appreciate it when team members will take the time and actually come to the office and meet with us. I don't need it all the time, but it is good to have that. So it's like still working at a table together, much like breaking bread together. There is a ritual of that I still enjoy.
On this topic, I'm curious if you can think of what's one way you used to work that you wouldn't go back to and that doesn't exist anymore. I can tell you, like I'm not going to give everyone my age, but I did start in drafting, carrying a T-square to school with a main line. I think there's a lot of value in using your hands, but I don't think the industry is going back to that. And I'm curious if there's something that you can think of too that you used to do that you were probably not going to go back to.
Say, over the last, I guess, 10 years or it's like more than that, over a decade, our tools certainly have changed the way we do things. For example, we used to redline things and then we come back and check and we have these pencils to mark things up. Almost nobody does that anymore. And so you've moved away from that system, if you will, to a system where you're drawing in a real time using Revit or some sort of 3D software. So the engineers, the designers, everybody has to understand almost all the elements of the building. So when they're doing it, they do it the right way. So yes, I don't think we'll go back and redline it. But the expectation of each and every engineer now is slightly different. Like they need to understand a few more things, to integrate into that design element.
Let's see. I was going to say the way complete architecture teams are formed feels very different. When I first started in the profession a long time ago, it was still very much compartmentalized. Architect, interior designer, lighting designer, or even multiple architects. We're on quite a few jobs to where, we're one of 3 architects or interior designers on the job, like at a hotel project, because on large scale projects, there is an increased desire to have a wider variety of experiences and voices on them. And it can be incredibly challenging for a client to say that out loud and go and hire for it because it adds a lot of complexity to their life. But I think the firms that we work with, even the large ones, like we're working with SOM right now on the new Austin airport, they collaborate in an incredible way. We have just real conversations like, hey, these are our strengths and these are our gaps. And where are we best on this project? And where should we stay out of your way? And on an airport, it's pretty much 95% stay out of their way because I did not understand the complexity of an airport until very recently. So I think that's different. I think another interesting thing that's a change is, we definitely don't sketch as much. We don't communicate with our hands as much. We feel like we have to model it, which has its own limitations and it produces its own products. So we actually try to encourage, we actually have a sketching club and we do sketch exercises to try and make sure that sort of eye, mind, and hand connection in design continues to exist past a mouse or a touchpad. Sometimes that means we will model a project roughly and then we'll sketch over it. And it's been interesting because many times those sketches, which are more powerful than real life rendering that came from a rendering farm someplace else, because those things aren't as interesting as they used to be. It used to be, wow, look at that rendering, it's incredible. Now it's like you can go on ChatGPT and they'll give you whatever you want. But what you can't get is a hand-drawn sketch of your house, of your project. That's different.
We have some questions coming in. So first question is, may I join your sketching club?
Yes.
From Adam Gates. Have you developed formal checklists for typical issues or questions, or do you jump in fresh every time and work from memory?
This one alludes to what the thought process I was going through my head when you were saying, what is a tool we should no longer grab out of the bag and use again? And my first thought was the concept of let's do it like we did it last time. everything in the design industry is changing. Temperatures are changing, end results are changing. You really always need to approach a project with a blank canvas. You use the same design methodology and thought process, but not the actual tools that you grabbed from before. And I feel like that's something that over time you have to untrain yourself to go back to that and really approach it fresh each time.
I'm curious for you guys, are you using AI in any capacity yet?
I've used it some for quick picture, try to describe something and see how they would throw it out there. We use it mainly for trying to take the same description and sound it more, recreate it to sound sexy for another office building. Describing an office building different from the last office building is harder than you might think.
Yeah, just an ongoing curiosity of like trying to take the temperature of where this all is at any given time.
Michael, do you use AI in any capacity today?
We do. We will have it help us with writing a little bit. That's an easy one. And then we don't have it design buildings per se, but we will use Midjourney and Kriya and some other tools to help iterate on projects that we're working on. So really as a design tool. And then we will also use it to render or add entourage or mood or feel to a project. So we'll take a render and we'll be like, show it to me in a nighttime scene just to see if like, hey, is this worth pursuing? Like in a large bird's eye site plan, we'll use it to like populate the tiny people in the trees instead of someone coming in there and like doing it in Revit. So yeah, it's not quite replaced us yet. I'm sure I will soon be replaced in some capacity, but it is helping speed up and giving us some flexibility and optionality and have us iterate quicker, which is what my goal is. Like, I just want to look at more options as quickly as we can.
Chris, are there any other questions from the audience?
Let's see here. So there's a question about how to manage information exchange and the proper timing of inputs. Given that you have a real-time model, you have access to the kind of current state of the project. How do you think about not going all in immediately once you have, especially from the engineering side? Do you have a way, is it kind of just understood at what degree of definition you're working at? Is that communicated outside of the model? I think there's some curiosity about how to still orchestrate while also being collaborative.
A very good question. Is really, in my opinion, a case by case. Ideally, we love working with Michael and his team and other clients that we've worked with over the years and have a pretty good understanding of what the level of expectation is at certain milestones. Depending on workload, there's days where we're eager to get in and draw it all up. But if we're not communicating with their design team and understanding which areas may still be in flux, they're still bouncing around design layout options, it's hard to know like when can we run full speed and knock it out, or where we need to be a little more cautious and show intent, but not show the level of detail that we want as our firm to represent ourselves, the end product too early and show our cards. The same comes with the level of detail your design, what size conduit and pipes and different components you show can represent the level of quality of what our product is. But there's a fine line between showing too much and you're telling a contractor exactly how to do everything. Maybe they had a cheaper route. You need to choose some of those battles wisely.
I think this is one of the things where we may still be using the this format perspective, what each milestones mean. ST milestone, the concept milestone, the ST, the DD, and design. Some of those things, you don't want to go too ahead of the entire design team. So we sort of like have our own points where we'd like to stay maybe a step behind the architecture, for example. And so I think we use the traditional, milestone expectation still, I think, to some degree.
Architects and engineers working together, finding common ground, especially in a changing world. Michael, Sujay, and Eric and Robert, thank you very much again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye all.